What's up, my beautiful people? It's your boy Dixon. Today we want to react to Trump empties NYC jails, deporting all migrants. Let's get to it.
This could be a really significant switch up. Mayor Adams meeting with border czar Tom Homan, where they talked about removing violent migrant gangs from New York City. Adams then announced that, he would issue an executive order allowing ICE agents on Rikers Island.
For years, New York has stood firm as a sanctuary city, blocking ICE from local jails and protecting criminals from deportation. But with gang activity reaching all-time highs, that's now changing. And ICE will now have full access to New York's notorious facility at Rikers Island. But to activists who sympathize with criminals and want open borders, this somehow puts our entire city in danger.
Police are trying to tackle the rapidly escalating violent crime among Venezuelan gang members in the city who have gotten into New York.
For 2 decades, ICE agents were allowed to operate at Rikers.
So it means these gang leaders are not the members of, they are not the guys from New York, they are just from migrants from Venezuela.
It's really unsafe in this community.
There was women everywhere.
That's
Okay, do they have the right documents to be in New York, or what happened? That is what is making me crazy.
Gang activity.
When our communities are under attack, what do?
We know the intentions of the Trump administration. This is bad for New York City, and this is bad for New Yorkers.
That's because the people that are pushing for this kind of stuff are liberals that live in completely separate areas that don't have to deal with any of the fallout. They have no connection to it, but they think that they have like some sort of cultural solidarity with some, like random immigrant that came and is committing crime here.
So as the federal government tries to get gang members off our streets, our local government is doing the exact opposite. But what none of our local leaders will admit is that rising gang activity and crime are exactly what happens when you protect criminals while telling the law-abiding to stay quiet about it. Which explains why New York is reeling from simultaneous, unrelenting crime waves like shoplifting, robbery, and assaults in the subway where people have been caught lighting fires. All of it happening because we've removed every consequence for committing these types of acts in the name of social justice. But now that ICE is going into New York City's jails to deliver actual justice to gang members and criminals for crimes they've already committed, activists are losing their minds. Because to them, someone with a long criminal record who might have come here illegally just to victimize people isn't a criminal. Instead, they're the victim of an unfair world and of an unfair country called America, which to them is the real bad guy for having this thing called a border. And to this group, nothing is more repulsive than America electing a president whose goal is to enforce it by removing the wrong people from our country. Which brings us to the real reason why ICE raiding New York City's jails is so needed and so hated at the exact same time. Once it works and our streets are made much safer, those who've been advocating for these criminals are going to look really foolish. Because while these people claim law enforcement is toxic to immigrant communities, the immigrant communities reeling from crime are going to really benefit from this. Starting the very moment ICE enters our jails and comes out with the gang members our city was planning on setting free, leaving them to once again commit crime in the communities they've invaded. And as you're about to see, these gang members, they've only come here because this city helps them commit crime.
So is whatever Trump is doing against the law, against the people from New York? I don't understand. Someone is saying whatever he's doing is against what New York wants, and is deporting all the migrants. Are they the ones who are committing the crimes or something?
Our criminals have a better chance of getting let off the hook with a slap on the wrist than just about anywhere else. And after getting released, they go back to the communities they've embedded themselves with and commit the same crimes over and over again, leading to a revolving door justice system that doesn't help anybody except the bad guys. But that's about to change because pretty soon ICE is going to be able to go inside New York City's jails where these repeat criminals are held, and they're going to be able to get them off our streets permanently.
This video was made while the gang members were in Ecuador, and its purpose is to recruit new members.
Then, when you fast forward, you see the same individuals where? In Times Square. So that's our concern.
The NYPD says Tren de Aragua has been making it over the border with the migrant influx and is getting established.
So if you're a gang member like one of these guys and you want to commit as much crime as possible, your best bet is to go to a place where the local legal system does not take your actions seriously at all. And sadly, New York City's decriminalization efforts have made this just such a place. And members of this notorious gang have apparently been arrested hundreds of times. How is that possible? If these individuals are not being immediately released after they wind up in the back of a police car. And sadly, our legal system has made New York a place that just hands out unlimited get-out-of-jail-free cards that these gang members have and are using to commit moped crime, robbery, shoplifting, and assault, all of which are now at levels that have the law-abiding in this place looking over their shoulders when they leave their homes in the morning, while they step over piles of stolen goods that these gang members hand to women in suitcases who then sell them on the streets. And the very idea that our leaders and activists are out there making a big fuss about getting people like this out of here permanently is alarming. And it means they've aligned themselves with criminals at the expense of the very immigrant communities they claim they're advocating for.
Some worry this could open the door to tougher crackdowns on immigrant communities. Today, supporters rallied at Foley Square in downtown Manhattan.
We know that you work for Trump! Mayor Adams, you're Trump! We know that.
New York City is a sanctuary city, and this means local laws limit how much the city cooperates with federal immigration enforcement. They are all...
So New York City's mayor, he's in a lot of trouble locally because he wants to cooperate with the new president who wants to get these criminals out of our city. But because of that, there are calls locally for him to step down, and if he won't step down, for the governor to step in and remove him. That's how badly they want our precious criminals to get to stay here as long as possible. And they're okay with keeping these people on the streets if it means not cooperating with President Trump, who just decided to throw out the mayor's historic bribery charges, which many say were politically motivated, after the mayor complained about how the last president handled the asylum crisis, openly saying that this crisis would destroy New York City, and depending on where you live, it might look like that's already happened. And right now in Queens on Roosevelt Avenue, we're witnessing a massive police surge that has been going on for several months already, with the goal of stamping out gang activity in that particular neighborhood. This was a haven area for this Trende Aragua group, and over the last couple of years, residents say crime in that neighborhood has exploded. And right now, you've got police officers all over the place. However, the gang members are still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the police to leave, and as soon as they do, their conscripts will begin robbing the local businesses and selling the items right on the sidewalks in front of those stores once again. But this neighborhood, it's incredibly diverse, and it's one of those places that makes New York City great, but it can't do that if we're going to allow gang members to run around there and take it over from the inside. Yet the activist crowd here maintains that getting dangerous criminals off the streets is somehow an attack on every immigrant.
We have 350,000 students in the New York City public schools who speak languages other than English at home. And right now they're extremely scared, and many of them have stopped coming to school because they fear deportation.
Mayor Adams responded to the...
So, my wife is an immigrant, and we've got two daughters living in our bilingual home who are now at school. And you know what? The topic of deportation has never come up at our dinner table. And obviously, these activists are putting forth propaganda. Here they are saying that over 350,000 students are now afraid to go to school. But New York City only has 870,000 public school students. And we're supposed to believe that 40% of these kids are in legitimate danger from deportation? Not because they're even here illegally, but according to that activist, that they speak another language at home that isn't English? This attempt to paint the deportation of criminal gangs who traffic people and products illegally in our country as an anti-immigrant roundup is the epitome of misinformation. But because there are so many New Yorkers here who hate Trump and ICE, there's a willing audience here that will suspend reality and believe this stuff, which will just end up benefiting these gang members at the expense of law-abiding immigrants, something enabled by our sanctuary city laws and no other reason.
For 2 decades, ICE agents were allowed to operate at Rikers until the city passed sanctuary city laws in 2014, banning officers from the jail complex. A provision in one of those laws permits Adams to issue that executive order so long as it's, quote, for purposes unrelated to the enforcement of
10 years. That's how long ICE has been banned from getting dangerous criminals out of our jails and removing removing them from our country completely, something that's been done in the name of public safety, but now the general public is just less safe. Especially when you've got the same people committing crime over and over again and just getting released to do it again. Between sanctuary city laws and decriminalization, we've got the perfect combination of rules that benefit the wrong people. And many of these criminals entered our country over the last 2 years on buses from the southern border and then immediately made their way to immigrant communities that were already established, blending in with them and ruining them. And with New York City's endless promise of free housing, medical care, food, and clothing, a promise that does not disappear when one finds themselves in the back of one of these corrections buses, these gang members have had it made from a crime standpoint. But the problem is our criminal sympathizers don't think any of this is a real problem, which must mean their personal lives are totally disconnected from the plight of the New Yorkers who have to deal with this stuff every single day. And it must mean that even when this stuff does make the mainstream news, they're still willing to ignore it.
I think there's a department that is not doing its work effectively, because if these gang members, they commit crimes, they are arrested and then they are released, don't they have enough evidence that these guys committed crime and they're supposed to be in jail for a certain number of years? Why are they being released?
You could choose to not believe it, and your everyday life would reinforce that false belief. Which is exactly how we can have a city full of activists and neighborhoods that are full of gang members. The two never cross paths. And those out there advocating for immigrant communities never go to the immigrant communities, which are afflicted by this new type of crime. Which is too bad, because every day new evidence comes out that these neighborhoods have a real problem and could really use somebody to advocate for them.
What I don't understand is this deportation on all migrants or people with fake documents or maybe something like that? Because whatever that lady was saying, 30,000 or something thousand of the students are afraid to go to school because of migration. Are they legal in the country or something?
That's been around for decades. But because of our sanctuary city laws, which protect gang members and criminals, the wrong people have infiltrated this place, and the types of illegal activity going on here are unlike anything I've seen anywhere else in New York. For example, you've got these vans, which are like miniature mobile shopping malls. The doors are open, they're full of products. You've got people standing out in front looking out for the police, and if they show up, they close their doors and drive away, which is an even more blatant way of selling stolen products than the people who spread out tools on blankets from
So these are the same things that have been stolen from the stores and shops.
Begging for something to be done to make their neighborhood safer. They want more police there. Yet for some reason, the immigrant activist crowd is completely ignoring the plight of this neighborhood. And the reason these activists are not in these local communities is because the crime that's happening there doesn't fit their predetermined belief system of what's actually crime and what's actually not crime.
985 arrests, that along with close to 12,000 summonses, hundreds of confiscated vehicles. This was Mayor Adams at a town hall Wednesday night.
We walked the streets, not 1 p.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And when I went back there the other day...
So is New York City's mayor perfect? No, absolutely not. And in fact, he might not even be mayor by the time you watch this video. However, the thing that makes activists so upset about him is that he's mayor of people that live in neighborhoods that have a crime problem, and he goes to those neighborhoods and he sees for himself what's going on. Which is why he's had no problem signing on with a deportation agenda focused on criminals and dangerous individuals who are already in New York City's custody. That makes perfect sense. These criminals are destroying our neighborhoods, and if we release them, they're just going to keep doing it. But if you're a rich elitist activist who doesn't live in one of New York's
they are not supposed to be released if they are criminals.
You might not think any of this is really happening. And if you don't live near a shelter that's got these gang members living inside of it who are trying to recruit new members from it, you and your friends can tell each other that this stuff's not actually happening, and you can maintain your lifestyle while advocating for criminals who shouldn't even be here in the first place.
Rosa Sanchez says she still doesn't feel safe after a man chased her daughter last month.
I fear walking out of my house in the morning, going to work, and returning. It's really unsafe in this community.
So these immigrant advocates, if that's who they say they are, they should be in neighborhoods like this advocating for people who are in a dire situation. But that's not what happened. This local community had to band together and get a hold of the news and get the cameras there and make so much noise that something eventually happened. They were even begging the governor to send in state troopers to do the job they didn't think the NYPD had the resources to handle. Yet for some reason, we've got all these protesters who are down by City Hall protesting Trump, protesting the mayor. But it's not a real neighborhood where real people have to live with the neglect of our city on a day-to-day basis. With some folks saying they feel unsafe from the moment they leave their homes. And the last thing any community wants is for the gang members who are wrecking it to keep coming back. But that's exactly what's going to happen if these activists have their way. To put a stop to any of this cooperation between our mayor and federal officials who want to keep people safe. And if that happens, they'll just be stopping actual law-abiding immigrants from achieving the American dream by stealing that dream and turning over these areas to criminals who've come here for the express purpose of committing crime while exploiting the people around them, making these gang members and criminals the ones who are really putting immigrant communities at risk. What do you think about that? Is it the right move to allow ICE back into New York City's jails so that they can collect dangerous individuals when they're off the streets and disarmed and in custody where they can't hurt the general public? What would you say to activists who think that this type of law enforcement puts everybody at risk, even if they're not criminals? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, personally, I think this guy should just go to jail so that you can go to the street and work on the criminals. If they are there, if those guys who have stolen things, they're selling on the streets, back to jail. Maybe you can single out the gang leaders and try to, because I've seen the gang leaders are in Venezuela trying to recruit children. So that is one of the things you're supposed to work on. Try to fight that gang leaders so that they should not recruit more children and more criminals into their gang. Otherwise, I thank you for watching this video. See you next time.